If you have been living under a rock lately, first of all, get out of my house, and secondly, we had an outburst of posts on forum because Arena tries to build a little bit of traction for upcoming beta. Arena hire another marketing guy already. Anyhow, I'm not very fond of just reading what's on screen. I am convinced my target audience aren't illiterals and are craving for a little bit more than "Papa, read me a bedtime forum post." But we have some warrior news and I feel at least obliged to cover those. So let's theorycraft a little. Knowing what we have, will staff serve its purpose and how well? First, knock off what we do know. Staff skill 2 and skill 5. Skill 2, Valiant Leap, is basically support version of Earthshaker. You yeet thyself and grant healing plus boons and probably do damage in area of landing. Skill 5, Bullet Catcher, is a block, like Shield 5, which gives you access to follow-up skill like Ranger's Greatsword 4 does. The follow-up skill was named Defiant Roar and will also heal for an amount increasing with number of blocked attacks. We can already discern that despite being support-oriented, staff will grant sizable amount of benefits to non-support builds as well, in all game modes. Mobility and self-sustain are very important for warrior, especially in versus modes, and having both on the same button is nothing to scoff at. Similarly, Bullet Catcher being a hard block and having heal as a follow-up is going to make a significant improvement to survivability of most builds. For non-supports, staff will present an option to play with much riskier builds, because you won't need healing from traits as much, and will have good two-hander as a fallback option. Supports, this is where things start to get complicated. It doesn't fall under questioning that addition of staff will be an improvement. However, nothing that we know fixes the most prominent issues with warrior support options. Staff having free access to healing and boons does indeed alleviate how heavily warrior had to lean on traits and utilities for healing. Up to this point, warrior had to dedicate his entire utility bar to healing, making boons from banners and valuable utility very hard to access. This wasn't a roadblock that couldn't be jumped over, at least in PvE, where not having life-saving utility wasn't that big of a deal, since all you have to do not to die is move out of red circle. In versus modes, on the other hand, warrior really depends on his utility bar to survive, so having that predetermined was a massive throttle, choking out all hopes for viability. Certainly, with staff Alaxworn will fulfill its purpose even with their very little concentration, or perhaps even force Daring Dragon nerf to put emphasis on actually having the darn concentration. And Quick Heal Zacker, well, it has been extremely scuffed to build up to this point, but with enough stubborn defiance it could do the job. With staff and reduced need for rage skills for rage upkeep, it is certainly an idea I'm eager to test extensively. However, as much as the two skills we have info of are clearly what we've been waiting for, there are still enigmas upon enigmas glued to the side of this weapon. I've spotted at least one more animation, heavily suggesting a gap closer, a circular attack, a cast animation looking cleansish, healish, boonish even, casted before what was to be Bullet Catcher, and something returning to player, not to mention vulnerability procs. And no, that animation wasn't Signet animation. This is how this animation looks. Immaculate, isn't it? So we have basically confirmed 2 gap closers and 3 support skills, 2 of which we know. Now we only lack certainty of what those skills do, and whether or not we have seen the best. What the best looks like is certainly the most important thing regarding staff, as an absolute metric tone of effects are directly related to the best skill. First and foremost, Soldier's Comfort, Warrior's only source of group protection, and on top of it, Martial Cadence, potent source of group stability, and both quickness and alacrity generation are glued to the best skill, not to mention non-support oriented effects like Best Mastery and /or Best Precision. Best skill being the single most potent support tool in Warrior's arsenal would make sense, especially considering that Adrenaline is after all Warrior's class mechanic. Adrenal skills are the main recipient of weapons power budget in most cases, aforementioned traits, and that staff's best skill will be the only skill Bladesworn doesn't get access to. Anyhow, what we know and what we've seen allows us to be cautiously optimistic. This looks to be warrior weapon first and a support weapon when you build for it. I can picture staff being not half bad, safe-ish weapon, the likes of Ranger's Greatsword, when you build pure damage. So, both fans of green numbers and hardcore Wpierdol enthusiasts have something to look forward into the future. Especially Wpierdol enthusiasts, as there are still issues with support builds that remain unresolved. When you look at Tactics straight line, Soldier's Comfort, Healing trait, is in the same column as Roaring Reveal, Boon Uptime trait. In the next column, Shrug It Off, Cleanse and Healing trait, is in the same column as Empower Allies, another Boon Uptime trait. And finally, Martial Cadence, Boon trait, Vigorous Shouts, Healing trait, and Phalanx Strength, another Boon trait, are all in the same column. With not having options for group healing and group boons in other trait lines, Warrior is forced to rely on tactics for near everything, and therefore forced to choose between boon uptime and healing/cleansing almost all of the time. And on top of that, boon uptime for defensive boons, protection, resolution, etc. are insufficient even with 100% boon duration. With 5 base seconds of resolution, doubled standards needs 3 banners to upkeep full duration even with alacrity. And because interval of marching orders isn't affected by alacrity, buffing its protection uptime to 4 seconds isn't going to suffice for group protection uptime. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg, because to take more banners, Warrior needs to take less shouts, and without just one of your shouts, you either have significantly less cleanse or can't upkeep might on the group. Not to mention a cut to healing output. And to upkeep boons, we need to take 3 banners. And if we do that, we still can't fully upkeep either resistance or protection, because the traits needed to upkeep these two are in the same bloody column. ArenaNet, shuffle these men's traits. Crapface out.